Hi, I'm Annie Fitzsimmons. I'm your Washington Realtors Legal Hotline lawyer. And today we're going to talk a little bit about your duties under the agency law and what the Department of Licensing is seeing in their investigations of complaints. You're expected to know what your duties are under the agency law, and if there's any question in your mind, I would encourage you to talk to your managing broker or to go straight to the law, the agency law, RCW 18.86. Every agent owes the minimum agency law duties, which are set forth at 1886.030. That's RCW 18.86.030. That's the minimum agency duties. And then on top of that, each of you owe the duty to your client in the transaction. If you represent the seller, your duties are set forth at 1886.040. If you represent the buyer, 1886.050. And if you're a dual agent, they're set forth at 1886.060. Those are your duties to your client. You owe no other legal duties to your client unless you take on additional duties. And what the Department of Licensing is finding is that brokers, in probably an exuberance to be helpful, are agreeing to take on additional duties for clients. And when you do that, which you're allowed to do, you can take on any duty you want to. But when you take on an additional duty, you're required to perform that duty competently. So if, for example, buyer says, I want to know if there are any sex offenders in this neighborhood, and you say, I'll get that information for you, and you go to the sheriff's website, your local sheriff's website, and you get a list of the sex offenders near you, that may or may not be competent because that list could change overnight, right? The better approach, of course, is to empower your buyer to do that research themselves. That's a simple example. What about the buyer who wants information as to whether or not they can remodel the house? I'm the buyer, I live out of state, I want to purchase this darling little home, cottage on a 3-acre piece, but I don't want it to remain a cottage, I want to turn it into the Taj Mahal. But I'm not going to have the ability to go to the local jurisdiction and find out what the development requirements are, or the building requirements are. So, broker, could you do that for me? Sure. If you do that, you become responsible for the outcomes. So if, for example, you find out that yes, on a 3-acre parcel, they can have a house that's 4,000 square feet, which is what they want to do, and there's sufficient, maybe it's on sewer, so it doesn't matter, or maybe there's sufficient septic capacity, or whatever it is you get. You dot a lot of those I's and cross a lot of those T's, but what you don't discover is that there's a bald eagle nesting on the property, so in fact, there's not going to be any construction allowed on this property, or not within a certain setback. And buyer doesn't make that discovery until after closing when they go to the county to make their building permit application. You did the research work for them. You told them, yep, you can build the house you want, but you didn't even know to ask about nesting bald eagles. That's an example. You're often asked to be home inspectors or boundary surveyors, and to provide information about the quality of the home or the location of the boundaries or any other number of circumstances about the property. Understand that if you take on any of those additional duties, you are required to perform them competently, which in some cases simply isn't possible because you don't have the requisite knowledge to perform those duties. The Department of Licensing would encourage you to develop a practice that requires you to come up with an answer for your client, enabling them to hire the experts that they actually need to fulfill those additional duties rather than taking them on yourselves. If you want to take them on, that's fine. You're certainly allowed to do that. But understand that you have to perform those duties competently. Instead, what you ought to do is practice in your own, maybe practice in office meetings, practice in your conversations with other brokers. How do you respond to clients who ask you to take on additional duties in a professional and a way that's significant to them and responsive to them without assuming a lot of liability for yourselves. Practice that conversation between yourselves so that you can come up with that information and that answer on the spot without feeling like you have to surrender to their request and take on additional duties that you're not able to perform. Hope that makes sense. If you have questions about that topic or any other, please send an email to me, legalhotline@warealtor.org. Thank you for being a Washington Realtors member.